On that committee, as well as the House Financial Services Committee meeting later today, that is Representative Ron Paul from Texas. Sir, thank you for being with us. You had an interesting exchange with the Fed chairman a few moments ago over the Great Depression. As you know, Ben Bernanke, a big student of the Great Depression, you say that we are in that period again. Why do you feel that way, sir?
Well, I'm convinced we are because we haven't changed policy. We have a Federal Reserve System that increases the money and credit out of thin air. They give us artificially low interest rates. That's fixing a price of money. It causes the problems that we had in the 1920s, which created the Depression, and then we propped it up by trying to keep the system together. And that's exactly what we're doing now. The system is overinflated. The bubble has burst. And what are we doing? We're trying to keep housing prices up and stimulate building. But there are too many houses. That's the problem. So we really haven't learned a whole lot. And I know Mr. Bernanke has studied the Depression, but his conclusion is that we needed more credit. We needed more challenge. But today, it's much more dangerous because today, the more money and credit you create out of thin air, the bigger the challenge it will be to the dollar. In the 1930s, there was not nearly the challenge on the dollar as it is today.
Congressman Paul, if we don't do anything, if we don't pass this $700 billion, whatever number it ends up being, what about the risks to the financial system? Forget inflation. What about deflation, for example?
Well, I think the risk would be less because I think what they're doing now is creating a situation where every single person in this country is going to suffer with a dollar depreciation. That means the savings of every person. Today, the risk is Wall Street buying up assets that have no value. They call them illiquid. Well, they're illiquid because nobody wants them. Let the price go down and find out what's valuable and let people buy them. I mean, Lehman Brothers got taken care of, so treat it like Lehman Brothers. That's how AIG should have been taken care of. But this whole idea, and they threaten us, and they say, oh, if you don't vote for this, things are going to be much worse. Well, they don't know. They could be much worse if we do vote for this because we're perpetuating a system that's coming to an end. This is a system of total fiat money since 1971, and we have inflated drastically. The dollar will be on the ropes if we don't change our way, and yet all we're doing now is spending more money, running up huge deficits, and the Federal Reserve creating new money. I mean, $700 billion they've already created, and they created that out of thin air, and now we're coming along and we're going to appropriate $700 billion. We don't have any of that money, and we're not going to cut anything. You'd think we'd come to our senses and maybe cut back on our empire around the world. That's where our real problem is we're spending all this money to police the world, and that's contributing to the financial crisis that we have.
All right. Well, Congressman, our Washington Bureau Chief, Bruce Becker, is also in Washington as well right now. He's got a question for you. I wanted to bring him in. Bruce, go ahead.
Yeah, hello, Congressman. I wanted to ask you, are you attending any of these closed-door meetings where Secretary Paulson and Chairman Bernanke are describing what I'm hearing is a much more dire portrait of the economy than they're painting publicly? Are you hearing those, and what kind of picture are they painting, and do you feel that those are not true, or that just simply the risks of government intervention are worse?
Well, I don't think they're lying, but they're not true, they're not accurate, because I don't think they have a full understanding of the economic picture, and they see it on the short run. Yes, on the short run, there are going to be problems, because, you know, if they did it my way, you might have a very, very serious recession for a year, but then it would be over with. Right now, they're prolonging what has to be done. Bad assets and bad debt has to be liquidated. But now they're not allowing that to happen. That's what we did in the Depression. That's why the Depression lasted for more than a decade. In 1921, we had a bad depression, because of the inflation for the World War I. But it was over in 1 year. People hardly even remember it. But now we feel compelled for political reasons to interject all this planning and spending and all. But the market is much smarter than all the politicians and all the central bankers that we have.
Well, so
can you give us a sense of where you predict this is going in terms of the votes?
Oh, the votes. I'm surprised that people aren't panicking because I don't sense that there's a vote. Everybody's getting thousands and thousands of calls. Don't vote for this. So I don't know how the Democrats are going to get the vote. And now they painted this picture of threats. If you don't pass it, it's going to be a disaster. So they've set the stage that they have to get it passed just for the psychological reason of what it'd be like if they don't pass it. But right now, just from my experience in talking to people on the floor, I don't know where the votes are going to come from. The only way they're going to get the votes is they're going to have to give everybody something, which will compound our problem. They'll be doing a lot of appropriations in the bill for each individual district.
Congressman, we're hearing that President Bush is mulling over the possibility of addressing the nation over the financial crisis. What are your constituents telling you from Texas? Because we're hearing a lot of Americans are not on board with this bailout as of now.
Right. Well, that's what I'm hearing. They don't want me to spend more money. I have a district that's been used to me of being around and warning about this and saying that we've gotten ourselves into trouble because we spend too much. And they wouldn't want me to vote for this. And I don't know how the president or anybody else is going to change the world. Unfortunately, the president, even if he were on the right track, he doesn't have the credibility to change people's minds.
Congressman, probably the best example of Main Street, Coca-Cola. Chairman comes out today and says, by the way, we think this is the most dire financial circumstances since the Great Depression. You know, when it trickles down to Main Street, how do you address it? How do you say we're going to walk away from this and take our chances with the market and see what happens with housing with Main Street?
Mainly because if you understand monetary policy, you know what you're going to do is destroy the dollar. That problem is 10 times greater than having some companies go bankrupt.
Well, let me ask you this. You were, of course, running for president. I mean, if you were president, if you were taking office in January, what would you do? What would you say to the American people to fix what has become a calamity in our financial markets and in our economy?
I would allow the liquidation of debt, just like in Lehman Brothers. That debt was liquidated, and that was fine and dandy. I would announce that the spending would be cut. We'd be bringing our troops home. We'd live within our means. We would cut taxes. We would balance the budget, and we would restore order. And we would deregulate. We wouldn't add more regulations. We need to regulate by the market. Regulation is good, but it's regulation by the market, which means you liquidate bad debt, or you regulate by bureaucrats.
Well, wait a minute. I'm sorry, Congressman, but wait a minute. Why not then, instead of pointing the finger at Wall Street that we're trading the securities, why not put more regulation on the mortgage industry, on appraisers? That's where this problem started 18 months ago. Why not go there?
That's completely off track, because the malinvestment comes from the excess of credit, and it's not the lack of regulation. Enron, people came to the conclusion that there wasn't enough regulation, so we passed Sarbanes-Oxley, which has been very damaging to the business community. But Enron was taken care of by the market. The stock went to zero, and people were charged with fraud, and the people who charged them with fraud were local people in Texas. So the laws that you need to enforce are fraud laws. But the real fraud today is the Federal Reserve that debases the currency. That's where the fraud is. It isn't the lack of regulation. You can't have a bad system and think, oh, we're going to have brilliant regulators and prevent all the bad things, because inflation of the money supply and lower than market interest rates causes the trouble. You can't regulate yourself out of that problem.
Yeah, but Congressman, real quickly, we don't have a lot of time. We want to get back to the hearings, but what is it that tells you that Ben Bernanke and Hank Paulson are selling us a bill of goods? I mean, why shouldn't we take them for what they're telling us? If we don't do this, we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Well, I mean, some people believe that, and not many people in the country believe it, and not a whole lot of congressmen are believing it right now, but they may well have their arms twisted out of fear and vote for it. But illiquid assets are illiquid because the price is too high. To dump that on the taxpayer makes no sense. You want the prices down.
My point, sir, is what's in it for them to bring this? I mean, if it's not that dire, why would they be here testifying yesterday and today and making such a case for it?
Well, they believe it. They believe it, but I don't think they have a clear shot at being credible. I mean, they've been involved in Wall Street. They've been involved with Goldman Sachs for a long time. So, but they've studied different economics. They haven't studied Austrian free market sound money economics. They're all Keynesians. They believe in intervention and planning and regulating and inflation, and the system that is not viable. And this fiat system has been around only since 1971. A fiat monetary system never lasts. It always ends. Gold and silver money is the only thing that lasts for the ages, and we're seeing the end of Bretton Woods too. Bretton Woods was predicted to end even as early as 1946. It ended in 1971, and others have predicted that the Bretton Woods II, which is what we've had is a pseudo paper standard, and it's a dollar standard, and we've lived way beyond our means because we got to create all this reserve currency. We didn't have to work for it. But now the dollar system is going to be rejected. Everything we're doing now will be a burden and a weight placed on the dollar.
Well, Congressman Paul, we thank you so much for being with us. So we've seen you on the Joint Economic Committee. We'll see you again this afternoon. House Financial Services Committee. Busy day for you. Thank you for being with us this afternoon.